I'm speaking today with Sir George Mathewson, the man who was credited for building RBS into the behemoth that it became in the 1990s and was chairman until very recently in 2006. We want to know from Sir George what he learned as he built his franchise, and now that he looks back on all that has happened with RBS and the UK banking system, what he thinks should have been or could have been right. Thank you very much for speaking with us today.
Thank you, Emmanuel.
In the time that you were CEO of Royal Bank of Scotland and then built it the way that you did, what's different in terms of building an organic business in the 1990s compared to what you think it will take to build a commercial bank to become the size of RBS that it did in the time that you were CEO?
Well, I suppose the biggest difference is in the macroeconomic situation in Europe as compared to what it was then. I mean, I was lucky in as much as we had a 10-year run or so of uninterrupted economic growth. I inherited a bank which was in very poor condition, but had the time and the capital to fix that and then benefit from the economic growth in the following years. I think today's situation in Europe is very different from that, and I think that the managers of today's large banks in the UK have they face a challenging position with the economics and of course the changes in bank regulation and capital requirements.
You inherited a bank that was essentially in a very weak position. I think the NPLs were very high, and the UK itself was coming out of a very bad recession. What were your priorities at the time that you took over as CEO, and what did you focus on in the initial years?
Well, I think my immediate priority was to restructure and divisionalize the bank. I felt that the geographical way in which the bank was divided was old-fashioned and did not fill the bill at all, even though it was the standard approach of European banks at that time. I think that the most important thing was to get the right people in the right jobs, and divisionalization or whatever is one thing, restructuring is another, but you've got to back it up by putting the people in the jobs that really believed in what we were doing and had the ability and energy to put it into practice.
And how much time did that take? 2 years, 4 years?
To complete it took 3 years or so, but in actual fact we made very rapid steps from day one, and very, very fast actions in terms of immediately formally restructuring the bank, immediately making key appointments, and immediately reducing the headcount in areas which could be reduced.
And then there comes a point where you started being bold. The acquisition of National Westminster, for example, which is a much bigger institution than RBS was at that point in time. Do you come to a point where you switch techniques or tactics and you become more aggressive after you come off a low base?
I think by that point we'd proven ourselves that we could run the bank. We had some of the best performance figures in the UK. We were generally approved of by investors and by observers as running a very good institution. We'd originated many new ideas, new businesses, so we had the confidence of investors. We also, of course, got to the point where do you go? And the obvious thing was acquisition. However, the only banks that were underperforming UK at that point in time were Barclays and NatWest, and it was felt that Barclays was not really available, and NatWest was doing very badly, and we knew that there wasn't any shareholder loyalty in that case, so we saw that as an opportunity.
What changed at RBS after you left?
Well, of course, I wasn't there after I left, so I'm not sure I can fully comment on that. What I would say is that investment banking started to play a bigger role. It had already started to play a role before I left RBS. I personally had never been an enthusiast of investment banking because I don't believe the culture fits easily with a commercial bank. I don't believe the remuneration culture fits well with the concept of achieving a long-term committed organisation. I think it breeds in a degree of individuality in terms of rewards, which is not helpful. So I think that definitely changed. I do believe that with the securitization and syndication assuming a bigger and bigger role all the time, that there would appear to have been a decline in credit standards. Now, I cannot say for certain that that's the case, but from what's emerged since, we could deduce that there does appear to have been a decline in credit standards.
But isn't that the pressure that is put on any institution that succeeds to a certain level, and then the next level is really getting as much of the assets off the books, maximizing shareholder return, and then getting into businesses so that it can scale even further. Didn't RBS do what it logically would have done given the opportunities that were in front of it after it grew to a certain size?
I think yes, I think there's truth in that. I think that you're also looking at the shareholders and the investors' drive to increase profits, to increase returns, and perhaps in the light of macroeconomic fundamentals, we look back and we feel that that should have been moderated somewhat. So I think it's easy in retrospect, but I know when you're there and there's the shareholders and the press, etc., are wanting more profits, it is hard to throttle back the animal.
Yeah. To what extent is a bank's propensity to go into investment banking a result of the personalities put in place to grow the business, and also the pressure put on an institution to make investment banking part of its core business? As you know, I mean, HSBC has had this pressure on it as a global bank for a long time, and
yes.
And almost anything they do is measured to the extent that how good it looks like relative to a global investment bank.
I think that's a problem. I do. I think that the way that investment banking rewards both people and institution is short term. It's immediate and tends to lead to good results as far as the individuals are concerned, but it does not necessarily lead to long-term value creation for the institution, and it can, in my view, it can damage the human relations side of it.